A night unlike any other. The Pacific Ocean roared against the cliffs below the Moretti Grand Resort as Grace Williams hurried through the dimly lit hallway carrying fresh linens. December storms were rare in Southern California, but tonight nature had unleashed its fury. Wind rattled the floor-to-ceiling windows while rain hammered the glass like thousands of angry fingers demanding entry. At 23, Grace had learned to move through the world quietly. Her white uniform was always spotless, her blonde hair tied in a practical ponytail. She wore minimal jewelry, just the silver bracelet her mother had given her before the accident 5 years ago. That accident had taken both parents and left her younger sister Lily paralyzed from the waist down. Grace worked double shifts at the resort spa, her skilled hands easing tension from wealthy guests while her own shoulders carried mountains of worry. Every dollar mattered. Lily's physical therapy was expensive, and the adaptive equipment she needed kept getting more costly. Grace's dreams of finishing nursing school had been set aside, but she never complained. Lily was her world, her responsibility, her reason for every sacrifice. An unexpected meeting. The resort manager had asked Grace to deliver towels to the owner's private suite on the 20th floor. Sebastian Moretti rarely stayed at his own property, preferring his penthouse in Los Angeles. But tonight he had arrived unexpectedly, and the regular housekeeping staff had gone home early because of the storm warnings. Grace knocked gently on the suite door. No answer. She checked her phone. The message clearly stated to leave the linens inside. Using her master key card, she pushed open the heavy door and stepped into luxury that took her breath away. The suite was enormous. Modern furniture in shades of cream and gray created an atmosphere of sophisticated elegance. Original paintings decorated the walls, and through the massive windows, she could see lightning illuminating the angry ocean. The view was breathtaking and terrifying at once. She moved quickly toward the bathroom to stock the towels, wanting to finish before anyone arrived. Grace had seen Sebastian Moretti from a distance several times. He was tall and striking, with dark hair that always looked perfectly styled and sharp green eyes that seemed to notice everything. He never smiled, and employees whispered that he had ice water in his veins. When darkness falls. The lights flickered once. Grace froze, holding a stack of white towels against her chest. The lights flickered again, and then the entire suite plunged into darkness. Her heart jumped. A moment later, emergency lighting kicked in, casting strange shadows across the room. Grace heard the suite door open. Heavy footsteps moved through the entryway. She stood paralyzed in the bathroom doorway, knowing she was about to lose her job. Sebastian Moretti was famously private and had strict rules about his personal space. "Who is in here?" His voice was deep and sharp, accustomed to immediate answers. "Sir, I apologize." Grace stepped into view, her hands trembling slightly. "I was delivering linens. The manager sent me. I will leave immediately." Sebastian appeared in the doorway of the living area, his tall frame backlit by the emergency lights. He wore an expensive dark suit with the tie loosened, and his face showed exhaustion that matched the storm outside. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. "The storm has knocked out the main power grid." His voice was calmer now. "You should not try to leave. The elevators are not working, and those stairs are dangerous in this darkness." Thunder exploded overhead, so loud it seemed the building might split apart. Grace flinched involuntarily, dropping one of the towels. Sebastian moved forward instinctively, and suddenly they were closer than appropriate. She could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that reminded her of forests she would never visit. "I hate storms," Grace admitted before she could stop herself. Ever since the accident. Something shifted in Sebastian's expression. The coldness in his green eyes softened just slightly. "What accident?" Grace had not meant to say anything personal. But standing in the darkness with this intimidating stranger, words spilled out. "My parents died in a storm 5 years ago. Their car went off a cliff. My sister Lily was with them. She survived but lost the use of her legs. Walls come down. Sebastian was quiet for several heartbeats. Then he gestured toward the large sofa facing the windows. Sit. The storm will last hours according to the weather service. We might as well be comfortable. Grace knew she should refuse. This man was her employer, engaged to some socialite whose picture appeared in magazines. But something in his voice made her move toward the sofa. They sat at opposite ends, a careful distance between them. Tell me about your sister, Sebastian said, surprising himself with the request. He never engaged in personal conversations, especially not with employees. But this woman with her honest blue eyes and obvious fear had somehow bypassed all his usual defenses. Grace talked about Lily. She described her sister's determination to finish college despite the challenges, her love of painting, her infectious laugh that could brighten the darkest days. As she spoke, her hands moved expressively, painting pictures of their small apartment near the beach where they could hear waves at night. Sebastian listened with an intensity Grace found both unnerving and comforting. In the dim emergency lighting, his face looked different than the cold mask she had seen from a distance. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and burdens carried alone. You work at the spa, Sebastian said. It was not quite a question. I am a massage therapist. I studied nursing before everything happened, but I had to stop. Bills do not pause for dreams. Grace smiled sadly. The spa pays well, and the tips help with Lily's physical therapy. That is a heavy load for someone so young. She is my sister. I would carry the world for her. The simple statement held absolute conviction. Sebastian found himself captivated by this woman's fierce love and quiet strength. In his world of calculated relationships and strategic alliances, her devotion was like discovering something precious he had forgotten existed, confessions in the dark. The storm continued its assault on the building, but inside the suite, a different kind of electricity filled the air. Sebastian found himself studying Grace's profile as she watched lightning dance across the ocean. Her features were delicate but determined, and there was a natural grace to her movements that no amount of money could buy. What about you? Grace asked suddenly, turning to face him. Everyone knows your name, but nobody really knows you. What is your story? Sebastian was taken aback. People rarely asked him personal questions. They talked at him about business opportunities or social events, but they never truly asked about him. He considered deflecting with his usual practiced responses, but something about this night made honesty feel necessary. My father built this empire from nothing, Sebastian began, his voice low. He started with one small hotel and grew it into a chain of luxury resorts. He was brilliant and ruthless. When I was 25, he had a massive heart attack and died at his desk. He left everything to me, his only child. That was 6 years ago. Grace waited quietly, sensing there was more beneath the surface. I never wanted this life, Sebastian continued, the admission surprising him. I studied architecture in college. I wanted to design sustainable housing for communities that needed it. But duty called, and I answered. My father's legacy, his employees, the investors who trusted him, they all became my responsibility. That sounds lonely, Grace said softly. Sebastian looked at her sharply. Most people think wealth eliminates loneliness. Money can fill your house but not your heart. Grace's words were simple but profound. Lily and I have almost nothing by your standards, but we have each other. That makes us rich in ways that matter. Dangerous territory. Thunder rumbled again, but this time Grace barely flinched. She was too focused on the man beside her, seeing past the expensive suit and cold reputation to the person underneath. Sebastian Moretti was trapped in a golden cage of his own making, just as surely as she was trapped by circumstance and responsibility. You are engaged, Grace said, not quite a question. She had seen the announcement in the business section of the newspaper months ago. Victoria Laurent, daughter of a banking dynasty, perfect match for the resort mogul. Sebastian's jaw tightened. An arrangement that benefits both families. Victoria gets access to the hospitality industry connections she wants for her event planning business. I get the social legitimacy that old money provides. It is practical. But do you love her? The question hung in the air between them. Sebastian stood abruptly and walked to the windows, his back to Grace. Outside, the storm showed no signs of weakening. Inside, his carefully constructed walls were crumbling. I do not believe in love, Sebastian said finally. I believe in compatibility, shared goals, mutual benefit. Love is a fantasy people use to justify emotional decisions. Grace stood and moved closer, though she maintained a respectful distance. My parents were married for 25 years. They held hands every day, laughed together constantly, and looked at each other like they were still discovering something new. That was not fantasy. That was real. Sebastian turned to face her, his green eyes intense. And where did that love get them? They died together, leaving you to pick up the pieces. They died having lived fully, Grace corrected gently. They knew joy and partnership and devotion. When I think about my future, I would rather have 5 years of that kind of love than 50 years of practical arrangements. The weight of truth. Sebastian moved closer without thinking, drawn by her conviction and warmth. They were standing near the windows now, close enough that he could see flecks of gold in her blue eyes. The emergency lighting cast soft shadows across her face, and he noticed details he had missed before. A small scar above her left eyebrow. The way she bit her lower lip when thinking. The pulse beating rapidly at her throat. You are remarkably brave, Sebastian said quietly. Most people in your situation would be bitter and angry. But you talk about love like it is still possible. Because it is, Grace insisted. Just because life has been hard does not mean I stop believing in good things. Hope is not naive, Sebastian. Hope is survival. The sound of his name on her lips did something to his chest. Nobody called him Sebastian except his mother, who had passed away when he was 15. Everyone else used formal titles or his last name, maintaining professional distance. But Grace spoke his name with a familiarity that felt both foreign and deeply right. Tell me something, Sebastian said, his voice rougher than intended. If circumstances were different, if we were just two people meeting without all these complications, what would you want? Grace's breath caught. The question was dangerous, inviting them both into territory that could only lead to heartbreak. But standing there in the storm with this man who had shown her more genuine emotion in a few hours than she had seen from anyone in years, she could not lie. I would want to know you, Grace whispered. The real you, not the cold businessman everyone fears. I would want to hear about your dreams of architecture and sustainability. I would want to understand what makes you laugh, what keeps you awake at night, what you wished for when you were young and still believed wishes could come true. Crossing lines. Sebastian reached out slowly, giving her time to step away. When she did not move, he gently tucked a strand of blonde hair that had escaped her ponytail behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and Grace felt heat spread through her entire body. This is impossible, Sebastian said, but he did not move away. I know. Grace's voice was barely audible over the storm. You work for me. I am engaged. There are 1,000 reasons this cannot happen. I know, Grace repeated. But I have not felt this alive in 6 years. Sebastian's admission was raw, vulnerable. Since the moment you dropped that towel and I saw genuine fear in your eyes instead of calculated interest, I have felt like I woke up from a long sleep. You do not want anything from me except honest conversation. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Grace placed her hand over his where it still rested against her cheek. I feel it too. This connection. But Sebastian, I cannot be the person who ruins your life or causes complications. I have Lily to think about. If I lost this job, I could not afford her care. I would never let that happen, Sebastian said fiercely. You say that now, in this moment. But tomorrow, reality returns. You have a fiancé and a company and a reputation to protect. I have a sister who depends on me and no safety net if things fall apart. Grace stepped back, breaking their physical contact even though it hurt. This night has been beautiful and unexpected, but it cannot be anything more. The heart wants what it wants. Sebastian let his hand fall to his side, but his eyes never left her face. What if I do not want to go back to that life? What if meeting you has shown me that my carefully constructed existence is actually a prison? Then you need to figure that out, Grace said, her heart breaking even as she spoke with wisdom beyond her years. But you cannot use me as your escape or your rebellion. That would not be fair to either of us. The lights suddenly flickered and came back to full power. The emergency was over. The storm outside was beginning to weaken, and dawn was only a few hours away. Reality was returning whether they wanted it to or not. Sebastian's phone immediately began buzzing with messages and calls. Grace watched as the mask slipped back into place, the cold businessman reasserting control. But now she could see the cracks in that armor, the man hiding underneath. I should go, Grace said, moving toward the door where she had left her card hours ago. Grace, wait. Sebastian's voice stopped her. Can I ask you one more thing? She turned back to face him. If I could offer you anything, money for Lily's treatment, a better position, anything at all, would you accept it? Grace smiled sadly. That is exactly what I mean about you not understanding. I do not want your money, Sebastian. Tonight, you gave me something far more valuable. You listened. You shared yourself. You reminded me that genuine human connection still exists. That is worth more than any amount you could offer. She left before he could respond, pushing her cart down the now well-lit hallway. Behind her, Sebastian stood in his luxury suite surrounded by expensive things that suddenly felt meaningless, holding his phone full of messages from a world that wanted pieces of him but never wanted the whole truth. For the first time in 6 years, Sebastian Moretti questioned everything, the morning after the storm. 3 days had passed since the storm, and Grace had not seen Sebastian once. She told herself this was good, that distance was necessary. But her heart refused to cooperate. Every time she walked past the 20th floor, she remembered their conversation, the way he had looked at her like she mattered, the vulnerability in his voice when he admitted his loneliness. Grace was finishing a massage session when her supervisor appeared at the spa entrance. Margaret was a kind woman in her 50s who had always treated Grace fairly, but today her expression was troubled. Grace, can we talk in my office? Fear immediately gripped Grace's chest. Had someone reported her for being in Sebastian's suite? Was she being fired? She followed Margaret down the hallway, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Margaret closed the office door and gestured for Grace to sit. I received an unusual request this morning. Mr. Moretti has asked that you be assigned as the personal therapist for a private client who will be staying at the resort for the next month. The pay is triple your normal rate, and all sessions will be in the client's suite. Grace's mouth went dry. Did he say who the client is? A young woman named Lily Williams. Margaret's eyes were knowing. Your sister, I believe. Tears sprang to Grace's eyes before she could stop them. Sebastian had done this. Somehow, he had arranged for Lily to receive treatment at the resort's world-class spa, and he was paying Grace to be her therapist. It was generous beyond measure, but it also felt like charity, and Grace had always been too proud to accept handouts. I cannot accept this, Grace said, even as her heart broke at the refusal. Lily needed this treatment desperately. The resort's facilities were far superior to the clinic they currently used. Margaret leaned forward, her voice gentle. Grace, I have worked here for 15 years. Sebastian Moretti is many things, but he is not cruel. If he arranged this, he did it because he believes you have earned it through your excellent work. Do not let pride rob your sister of an opportunity that could change her life. A sister's hope. That evening, Grace returned to their small apartment to find Lily at the kitchen table, her wheelchair pulled up close as she worked on a watercolor painting. Her sister's face lit up when Grace entered. "You will never believe what happened today," Lily said excitedly. "I got a call from the Moretti Grand Resort. They said I have been selected for a specialized physical therapy program. Grace, it is fully covered. They have equipment I have only read about online. The therapist is supposed to be one of the best in California." Grace set down her bag slowly, watching her sister's joy and feeling her resistance crumble. How could she deny Lily this chance because of her own complicated feelings about the man who had made it possible? "The therapist is me," Grace said quietly. "Sebastian Moretti arranged it." Lily's expression shifted to confusion, then understanding. "The owner? Why would he do that for us?" Grace sat down across from her sister and told her everything. About the storm, the unexpected conversation, the connection she had felt with a man completely out of her reach. Lily listened without interruption, her artist's soul understanding the emotions her sister struggled to express. "He sounds like someone searching for something real," Lily said when Grace finished. "And you gave him that, even knowing nothing could come of it." "That was brave." "It was foolish," Grace corrected. "I let myself feel things that can only lead to pain." Lily reached across the table and took her sister's hand. "Grace, you have sacrificed everything for me. Your education, your social life, your own dreams. If this man can give us both something good, even if his motives are complicated, why not accept it? Sometimes blessings come in unexpected packages." Victoria's true colors. Sebastian stood in his office overlooking the resort's main gardens, his phone pressed to his ear as his fiancée's voice drilled into his skull. "You are making us look ridiculous," Victoria Laurent said coldly. "The wedding is in 6 weeks. My mother has spent a fortune on arrangements. You cannot keep canceling our public appearances." "I have been managing a crisis with the storm damage," Sebastian replied, his voice flat. It was not entirely a lie. The storm had caused issues that needed his attention. But the real reason he had avoided Victoria was standing in the spa several floors below, probably trying to figure out how to refuse his gift. "You have staff for that," Victoria snapped. "This is about more than just repairs, is it not? You have been different since that storm." "Distant." "What happened?" Sebastian closed his eyes, seeing Grace's face in his mind. Her honesty, her strength, her refusal to accept easy answers. Then he opened his eyes and looked at his reflection in the window glass. Who had he become? A man playing a role, going through motions, accepting a loveless arrangement because it was practical. "Victoria, we need to talk. In person. Finally. Come to the house tonight. Daddy wants to discuss the merger details anyway." The merger. Of course. Their engagement had always been about business. Victoria wanted access to his hospitality empire for her event planning company. Her father wanted the prestige of aligning with the Moretti name. Sebastian had agreed because it made strategic sense, because his father would have approved, because he had stopped believing in anything beyond practical arrangements. But Grace had reminded him that some things mattered more than strategy. The confrontation. That evening, Sebastian arrived at the Laurent mansion in Beverly Hills. The house was massive and cold, decorated with expensive art that had been chosen by designers rather than personal taste. Everything about the Laurent family was calculated for maximum impression and minimum warmth. Victoria met him in the study where her father was already waiting. Charles Laurent was a powerful man in banking circles, used to getting what he wanted through intimidation and manipulation. "Sebastian, good to see you," Charles boomed, though his eyes were calculating. "We need to finalize the terms of the partnership. Once you and Victoria are married, we can begin the expansion into European markets." Sebastian remained standing while the other two sat. "There is not going to be a wedding." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's perfectly made-up face froze in shock, then twisted with fury. "Excuse me?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. "I cannot marry you, Victoria. It would not be fair to either of us. This arrangement was a mistake." Charles Laurent stood, his face reddening. "You signed contracts. We have invested significant resources into this alliance. You cannot simply walk away." "Actually, I can," Sebastian said calmly. "The prenuptial agreement has termination clauses. I will honor any financial commitments we agreed to, but the personal commitment ends now." Victoria moved closer, her eyes narrowed. "This is about someone else, is it not? Who is she? Some gold digger who thinks she can trap the great Sebastian Moretti?" "Do not," Sebastian's voice cut like ice. "You know nothing about her. So there is someone." Victoria laughed bitterly. "How predictable. Let me guess. She is young, beautiful, and probably working class. You think she loves you for you?" Victoria's voice dripped with contempt. "Wake up, Sebastian. Everyone wants something. At least I was honest about my ambitions." Sebastian met her gaze steadily. "You are right that everyone wants something. But some people want intangible things. Respect. Understanding. Real connection. Those things cannot be bought or negotiated. I am sorry for wasting your time, Victoria. You deserve someone who can give you what you want. But that person is not me." He left before either of them could respond, walking out of the mansion and into the cool evening air. His phone immediately began ringing with calls from Victoria's lawyers, but Sebastian ignored them all. For the first time in 6 years, he felt like he could breathe. A choice made. Grace was helping Lily into bed when her phone rang. She did not recognize the number but answered anyway. "Grace, this is Thomas, the night security guard at the resort. Mr. Moretti asked me to call you. He is in the spa waiting room. He says it is important." Grace's heart hammered. "What time is it?" "Almost midnight. The spa is closed, but he used his master key. He looks pretty determined." Grace looked at Lily, who was already smiling. "Go," her sister said. "Some conversations cannot wait." 20 minutes later, Grace walked into the darkened spa. Soft emergency lighting illuminated the waiting area where Sebastian sat on one of the plush chairs, still wearing his business suit but looking more disheveled than she had ever seen him. His tie was gone, his jacket tossed aside, and his hair was messy like he had been running his hands through it. He stood when he saw her. "Thank you for coming. Thomas said it was important. I ended my engagement tonight." The words hung in the air between them. Grace felt her world tilt. "Sebastian, you cannot make that kind of decision because of one conversation during a storm." "It was not just one conversation," Sebastian said, moving closer. "It was a moment of clarity that changed everything. Grace, I have spent 6 years building walls around my heart, convincing myself that emotions were weaknesses and practical arrangements were wisdom. Then you stood in my suite during a storm, terrified and honest, and you showed me what I had been missing." "I am nobody," Grace whispered. "I clean rooms and give massages. Your world and mine do not mix." Sebastian reached out and gently took her hands in his. "You are not nobody. You are someone who works 2 jobs to care for her sister. Someone who still believes in love despite losing her parents. Someone who refused my money because you understood that real gifts come from the heart, not a bank account. You are extraordinary, Grace Williams, and I have fallen completely in love with you." Tears streamed down Grace's face. This is crazy. We barely know each other. Then let us get to know each other, Sebastian said. No games, no arrangements, no practical considerations. Just two people seeing if what we felt during that storm can grow into something real. Grace thought about all the reasons this was impossible. The difference in their circumstances, the complications it would create, the risk to her job and security. But she also thought about her parents, who had loved fully despite knowing tomorrow was never guaranteed. She thought about Lily's words about accepting blessings in unexpected packages. I am scared, Grace admitted. So am I, Sebastian said honestly. I have never done this before. Real feelings, real risk, real vulnerability. But I would rather fail trying something authentic than succeed at something hollow. Grace looked into his green eyes and saw the truth there. This man had torn apart his carefully constructed life because of her. Not because he wanted to possess her or control her, but because she had reminded him that real connection was worth any risk. Okay, Grace said softly. Let us try. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was precious and fragile and strong all at once. They stood in the darkened spa, two people from different worlds who had found each other in a storm, choosing to build something real on a foundation of honesty and hope. Outside, the California coast was calm, the storm long past. But inside two hearts, a new kind of storm was just beginning. The kind that changes everything. The kind that reminds us that love, real love, is always worth the risk. 6 months later, Lily walked down the aisle at Grace and Sebastian's wedding, her legs strong from months of intensive therapy. Grace wore a simple white dress she had chosen herself, not something expensive or designer. Sebastian stood waiting for her with tears in his eyes, having finally learned that the greatest luxury was loving someone who loved you back for all the right reasons. Their first night as husband and wife did not go as planned either. They laughed until dawn, sharing dreams and making promises, building a life based on truth rather than transactions. And in the morning, when Sebastian woke with Grace in his arms, he finally understood what his father's empire had never been able to give him. He had found home in another person's heart. And that was worth more than all the wealth in the world. The end.